Look closely at a map of India. You are looking at a single country with over 800 major languages, distinct major religions, and drastically different climates. On paper, the statistical odds of this functioning as a cohesive nation are incredibly low. But these differences are not random. They are the direct result of thousands of years of geographical history and human migration. People simply adapt their lifestyles to survive the exact environment they find themselves in. For instance, if you settle along the tropical coastlines, like the backwaters of Kerala, your survival is intimately tied to the ocean. Now go to the complete opposite end of the country, to the extreme northern tip. Here in Ladakh, you are dealing with a barren, high-altitude cold desert surrounded by snow-capped mountains. These two environmental extremes dictate completely different daily realities. Down south, the culture develops around a diet of rice and fish pulled straight from the sea, while up in the mountains, the local economy and diets rely heavily on wheat and meat. Which brings up a complicated question. If our environments, our diets, and our traditions are so entirely opposed to each other, what exactly keeps us from fracturing apart? To answer that, we have to examine the darker side of human nature. When faced with an unfamiliar culture, there is a common instinct to view those differences not as equal variations, but as inferior traits. Prejudice is an internal thought, falsely assuming someone is lesser. When acted upon, it becomes discrimination, the exact moment people actively treat others unfairly. If this continues, it creates inequality, a systemic consequence where resources are deliberately withheld over generations. The clearest historical evidence of this process at work is the Indian caste system. The system functioned by locking people into specific occupational groups. If born the son of a potter, society forced you to remain a potter. You were completely denied the resources or the educational pathways to choose any alternative career. Geography creates variety. It dictates what we eat or how we build our homes. But when a society begins to rank those differences or assign fixed roles based on birth, it transforms natural variety into structural oppression. That manufactured inequality is the true existential threat to a nation. The British Empire certainly understood the danger of those fractures. When they looked at India's massive internal diversity, they assumed it was a fatal weakness, a society so fragmented that a divide-and-rule strategy would easily keep them in power. But the Indian populace proved that assumption entirely wrong. Men and women from drastically different regional, cultural, and religious backgrounds stood together and marched side by side to protest the empire. Protests and political alliances were only part of the story. The bond between these different groups was ultimately solidified by shared trauma. The ultimate proof of this bond was the Jallianwala Bagh massacre in Amritsar. Unarmed Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs gathered peacefully, and when the British general opened fire, they suffered and died on the exact same soil. Out of these brutal moments, symbols of a shared identity began to emerge. The Indian national anthem, written by Rabindranath Tagore, became a direct reflection of this collective struggle. Following independence, India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, studied exactly how the nation survived. In his book, The Discovery of India, Nehru argued that Indian unity was not something imposed from the outside. Instead, it was an internal principle he called unity in diversity. It worked because it relied on the widest tolerance of belief and the active practice of respecting customs far different from your own. Acknowledging these deep-seated differences fosters a culture of open-mindedness and mutual respect, turning potential points of conflict into a